Alrighty, hello folks, how's it going? It is time for some more 40k rantage, and this one has been a long time coming, I suppose, because it's a question I've not really asked or answered on the channel before. Usually I just sort of expect you all to be into 40k, but the amount of people who've been writing into Hobby Nightmares who have said, hey, you know, your channel got me into 40k, and your channel started me on my journey of getting into 40k, or just tabletop wargaming in general. So I thought, maybe now would be a good time to talk about whether I would actually recommend getting into the hobby at all. And by the hobby, I mean 40k. There is a wider plethora of games out there that you can get into and use your time with. But 40k is the one we will be discussing today, is the one that is on screen, with me playing Space Marine very badly on my own, because I don't really play Space Marine. I really enjoy it, but I don't really get time to play it very much. So, excuse my terrible gameplay. But I broke this video down into two parts of the script. The first part, it will be positives. The second part will be the counterpoints to those positives, so the negatives that you can... And then you can choose to believe what you will about the hobby. And maybe if you're already into 40k, you can take some issue with the things that I say about the hobby, or maybe add to my points. If you think I've missed something, put it in the comment section down below. I'd love to have a bit of a discussion. I do love reading these things when I'm having a cup of tea, when I've finished work and stuff. It's part of my daily ritual now. Like, I go on the comment section and I have a little look, and if I see something pertinent that I need to respond to, then I do. Sometimes I have a good conversation, sometimes I don't. But anyway, let's jump in. Is getting into 40k worth it in 2025? Or late 2025 is where we are now. So, positives first, of course. Let me just have a little quick sip of my tea before we go anywhere else. Alright, cool. Let's jump in. So, first of all, the community. Alright, the community is actually amazing for the most part. Alright? I wouldn't have a show called Hobby Nightmares if Hobby Nightmares were so prevalent to keep... Well, if they were prevalent enough to keep you away from the hobby, right? A lot of people say that to me all the time. They go, well, if the hobby's so bad, why should we even get into it if your show is literally called Hobby Nightmares? It is the exception that proves the rule, my friend. You know, if Hobby Nightmares were happening all of the time, nobody would watch. Alright? Nobody would watch this channel at all. The fact that people watch it shows that they don't come across Hobby Nightmares in the wild. So when one happens, they're very excited to hear about one in the wild, you know? The community at large, generally, in terms of 40k, is one of the most welcoming, nice, normal communities I've been a part of. A few of you may scoff at that. I'm talking about offline in real life. Okay, when you go into a store, when you sit down to paint some models with somebody, when you sit down to play a game with somebody, or you're just talking to them in real life, absolutely, this is one of the best communities to be a part of. Quite simple, right? Offline. We'll get into the counterpoint a little later on. But even online, it's a really cool community, right? The vast majority of people online are silent, but cool in 40k, in general, alright? Alright, next one. There are many different ways to play the game. It's more about finding your opponents than finding which game mode suits you. Alright, so there are many different ways to play 40k. From Combat Patrol to Kill Team to the full Strike Force, you know, the normal game, Armageddon. There are loads of different ways for you, Necromunda even. There are loads of different ways to get your 40k fix on the tabletop. One really cool way I've seen was on Play on Tabletop when they did like a King of the Colosseum thing, where it was 500 points versus 500 points, so a very small battle, and you could only have units with a maximum of toughness 9, which is really clever. And then they built like a Colosseum board, right? So it's like a circular board with like bits of terrain in it and stuff, and it was just a free-for-all, right? There were different missions in there too that you can do, and it was literally... Once you lose, you're out of the tournament. I'm thinking about doing that for the next Exile Fest. They went so well. It looked so good. I'm thinking about doing that for the next Exile Fest because I think that would be pretty cool. But yeah, you can even make up your own game modes, man. Like, there are thousands of different ways, different variables to play 40k. If you don't mind not playing in official tournaments and stuff, you know, there are loads of different ways to get your fix. So, it's more about finding your opponent, and that's why the good community does come in. The good community steps in there. So if you need to find a good opponent to play at your local game store, most of you watching this video will be able to go to your local game store, say, I've got an army of orcs, 1,000 points, does somebody want to have a game, and a nice person will want to play Warhammer 40,000 with you. At the very least, it'll be a bog standard person. Not overly nice, but just a normal dude will want to play 40k with you. Yes, there are Hobby Nightmares out there, but they're rare enough to constitute a show being called Hobby Nightmares. So those 2 points sort of link in together, right? It's more about finding the opponent that enjoys the 40k for the same things you do. Once you've found that, you're pretty much golden in the hobby. You've found exactly what you want. Even I've not really found that. I have best friends of mine, hello Matt, and other people who play 40k that are really good friends, who aren't into it the same reason I am, right? Matt is a very analytical, logical. He's a physicist at the end of the day, data analyst, wherever he's doing now, right? He's got a brain the size of Wisconsin, right? He's worked for CERN, all this other stuff. So he knows what he's on about. He's a very. I'm basically friends with, like, imagine Brian Cox, but he's like way more awkward. That's that's Matt. Okay, if you were at Exile Fest, you probably met him or even played him, and in 40k, he is. He loves number crunching. He loves getting the absolute most out of his list. You know, he's very good at remembering things. And as I said before, he's the kind of guy who's a nightmare for me to play sometimes because he's so good at the game and so good at, like, planning things out ahead of time. You know, sort problem solving in his brain that he's able to work out how the battle's going to go 3 or 4 turns before it goes that way. He could be an amazing tournament player if he just pulled his finger out and went to one of these tournaments. You know what I mean? Because he stops our games all the time and go, right, let's call it there after, like, turn 2. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, you're going to win because I'm like, yeah, how did you know that? He's like, well, just how it's going to go, right? You know, but law of averages, you know. You know, he's learnt not to do that these days. Like, we always play our games out to the bitter end now, and he has a lot of fun because he's good enough to know that that's not what I'm there for. I'm there to, like, play a few games, not just one, and we have a lot of fun together. So we're 2 people who have learned to adapt to each other's play styles over years, and it's taken us years. We met in university in, like, 2012, you know, so it's taken us, like, 13 years, bloody hell. It's taken us, like, 13 years to really become that comfortable with each other that we can play a game of 40k that we both get loads out of. We always enjoyed playing games with each other, but it wasn't like it is now, where it's like you actually look forward to it. Like, the last time we played together was, I think it was last December, and, like, I was away in I think it was York the week before, and I was just so looking forward to it. I was obsessed. I was like, oh my god, it's going to be such a cool game. You know, it used to be like, oh, I'm going to go play a game with Matt. Now it's like, yes, I'm going to go play a game with Matt, you know. So it's about finding those people who are into the same thing that you are in 40k, rather than finding the game mode that suits you. The game is constantly changing, which means just because a codex is on top now doesn't mean it always will be. The rules are always changing. So if certain models in your set, on your collection, aren't as powerful in this edition, there's a good chance they'll be buffed next edition. There's a good chance they'll be buffed when a new codex comes out. There's a good chance they'll be buffed when a new White Dwarf article comes out about them. You never know. It is always a constantly changing, evolving thing, is 40k in 2025. This never used to be the case. In 3rd edition, you were stuck with your rules, man. You got your rules, and that was it. I actually preferred that way of doing it, but this isn't about me. This is about whether I think you will be wanting to get into 40k or not. And if you're somebody who likes a constantly evolving paradigm in terms of the rules, you like the way that the game shifts and evolves over an edition, you find that interesting, that the meta, what's really cool, what's really happening right now, sort of changes as the entire edition goes on, 40k might be for you. Just because Space Marines are on all of the posters and all the boxes, they haven't been the standout best army in 40k for a long time. For the vast majority of 10th edition, it's been Eldar actually who've been the big bads, the big army to beat on the tabletop. Nowadays, it is a bit more balanced. But yeah, it's if you want to see a game changing and continuously getting patched and things always in flux, then 40k might be for you. There is a counterpoint to this argument that we'll get into later on, of course, but yeah, I'll get into that later. The models are the best in the world for what they are, and they simply are. As much as I love 3D printing services, and the only one I've seen come really close is something like Minimaker, which is why I support them on the channel so much. They're in the description down below if you want to go check them out. They're in the description. They don't pay me anything for this. It's just like I think it's a good business, so I just stick it on there because they're really cool models, and not enough people are taking advantage of how cheap they are and how good they are for the price. Because I very rarely see a company take on the quality of Games Workshop. It just doesn't really happen, you know. The Games Workshop's quality in terms of the models and the sculpts in general is fantastic. Not all of them, but in general, fantastic. Really good stuff. And you know, when you're buying from Games Workshop, or when you're buying a Games Workshop product, you're getting the product, right? It's not everyone cares about that. Not everyone cares about brand value. But there are the kind of people in the world who will want to go to McDonald's. I don't want to go to McDonald's, you know. No, I want to go to McDonald's. I want to go to the actual McDonald's. I want to go get myself a McDonald's burger. Now, why you'd want to do that, I don't know, but it's just as an example. But they are the best model-making company in terms of sheer models, in my opinion, in the world. And they should be, because they're the market leader. And it is literally their mission statement, is we want to make the best wargaming miniatures in the world, and we want to continue doing this forever. Right? That's literally their mission statement. Every company has one. Most of them are not public. Games Workshop is not public. It is, we want to make the best wargaming miniatures in the world, and we want to continue doing this forever. That's literally it. That's their mission statement. So in doing that, you know, they're succeeding. And if you want to be a part of that, there you go. Next part is, the nostalgia is very, very, very real. I think this is something that we will get the least amount of arguments with. I think a lot of people will sit back and go, yeah, the nostalgia is real. Even if you're a newbie, okay? 40k's been with you at some point in your past. Even if you're a newbie, the 40k nostalgia is real. From White Dwarf and other things, the actual pull of 40k is immense. Once you are in, it is very, very, very difficult to find anything else to fill that void. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I don't think you can. I think you can find parts of 40k and other things, but there's nothing that scratches that itch. This is why they make so much money. They stumbled across a formula in 40k that just does something that no other game does. That no other setting does. Mainly because they've cannibalized so many other settings and games. Do you know what I mean? They've cannibalized so many other settings and games that they've mashed them all up into one so everyone can find something that they like in it. And then they've run with it. You know, the grim darkness, the space Catholicism, things like that. It is all very unique and all very 40k. And they were smart enough to know the way that their bread is buttered. So once you're in 40k, once you get that fix, it's very hard to get it anywhere else. Do you know what I mean? But that's a good thing. It means that there's something worth watching and going through here. So those are the main good bits about getting into 40k, for me, you know. The camaraderie, things I've not touched on, the camaraderie, the sense of belonging, the sense of feeling. The mental health aspects I've not even touched on. I've left them to the end because, you know, there are so many other videos on this channel where I talk about it, but recently I've had some mental health trials and tribulations, but they go away, literally. I'm not saying they're in the back of my mind. Dude, they go away. I've had some very, very stressful times. When I say stressful times, I mean my stomach is in knots all day, right? I have this sinking feeling in my chest and my stomach all day. Unless I was painting models or putting a model together. And then those two things went away. I was able to fight my irritable bowel syndrome that I got through stress, through models. I shit you not, right? Literally by putting models together, by painting my exiled blades, by painting my orcs, by putting my dudes together, I was able to. My body returned to normal, right? My stomach unclenched, the feeling in my chest went away, and as soon as I stopped, after like an hour or two, it would start coming back again, right? And I'd have to go paint again, you know. In the really hardest times, the past month, I've done that and it's worked. Every single time. And not only that, it's worked afterwards, so I've chased that high again. I've gone into town to go and buy a White Dwarf. I bought 3 White Dwarfs to read back to back to back. Because I was chasing that feeling. I'd finished painting my models for the day, and I was coming to the end of my 2-hour cycle afterwards where I feel good. I'm still on a high, you know, from painting my models and doing something cool. That I went into town and bought more White Dwarfs. And then I sat there with my daughter while she watched what was she watching? It was a Spy Family. So she's watching Spy Family, and I'm sitting there just reading my White Dwarf, reading through everything. And again, I got that high again. I was still there. You know, it wasn't as good as painting models, but it was still there. This hobby is really powerful. Like, if you're suffering from something in your life that you want to get away from for a bit, or you just want to turn the voices off, you just want to turn things down a little bit, and you want to be immersed in something else, and it's something else that is, you know, absolutely, shall we say, productive. Get into painting 40k or any Warhammer, anything for that matter. You know, put some models together, paint your dude your way, and you will be in that zone. You will forget about everything else. Trust me, I know, because my mind is my worst enemy. I always try and find things to worry about, to stress about. It just does it to me, and I can't stop. It keeps me up at night, dude. It keeps going. It keeps going. It keeps going. And one of the main ways I just turn that shit off is I paint some models, or I put some models together. It just takes it all away. All away. Literally. Because you can't focus on anything else. It forces your mind to return to zero. My body and my mind is walking around for the last few weeks on like a -8. Do you know what I mean? Which is big. 40k resets it to zero. Does put me in the pluses, but it resets me to zero. And from there, I can start building 1, 2, 3. You know, even a 3 is a win. You know, considering how stressed I've been over the past few weeks. So, the biggest positive I can say to 40k is, if you're struggling and you have the wherewithal to get into it, this is something that can absolutely pull you through some definitely difficult times. And I can't recommend it highly enough for that. Okay, now that I've glazed the hobby for nearly 20 minutes, let's jump into our negatives and maybe reasons why you might want to rethink getting into 40k. If I've just convinced you to get into 40k, maybe you need to take these caveats into consideration before you go and spend some money. Alright, number one, obvious elephant in the room. The models are expensive. Not just expensive because all hobbies are expensive, because all hobbies are expensive, no matter what you're into. It was something that was used in Games Workshop all the time. Well, if somebody likes a car and they spend money on a car, that's expensive. If somebody buys a PC, that's expensive. Well, and then my counter-offer would be, yes, but once they bought that PC, that's it. They don't need to buy another PC every 2 years because there's a new edition of their PC that just came out. Do you know what I mean? And anyway, it's not just expensive because all hobbies are expensive, because they are. It's expensive in the extortionate sense. The prices always go up every year, as Games Workshop is determined to pass every single expense off onto the customer. This is a greedy company that could easily be making an 8 out of 10 profit and still be one of the best run and most profitable companies in the world, especially the UK, whilst keeping a hold of customer goodwill, if they wanted to, right? They could be making an 8 out of 10 profit and still be an amazing company who can pay all of their staff, that can give themselves bonuses, that can absolutely run the company for the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years, no problem, right? They choose not to do that. They choose instead to make an 11 out of 10 profit, which is unsustainable, right? They're gouging their own customer base out of sheer greed, and that is not changing anytime soon. I'm glad I wrote it that way because I've been trying to get this point out for a long time. I'm not against Games Workshop making money. I think Games Workshop should make money. Games Workshop should be a very profitable company because 40k is an amazing IP, and Games Workshop by and large is an amazing company. I absolutely think that they should be making a lot of money, right? And because a healthy Games Workshop, unfortunately, fortunately, doesn't matter either way. A healthy Games Workshop means healthy wargaming for most of us. Just is how it is. Unfortunately, it is how it is. They could be making an 8 or even 9 out of 10 profit, and still keep goodwill because they brought the prices down. You know, they literally started listening to the fan base, things like that. They could do that. They choose not to. They choose to make an 11 out of 10 profit, which means more people are going to leave the hobby. The hobby will start to shrink, that kind of thing. This is an active choice that they've made. If you don't have the money to get into Games Workshop or get into 40k, there's a very high sense that Games Workshop don't want you. Same thing's happening with wrestling right now, right? WWE's ticket prices have gone up, 400, 500%? Yeah, and people still go. because they're trying to test how far they can push it. The thing is, they've completely outpriced the middle class. The middle class can no longer afford to go watch wrestling live. It's unaffordable. We got tickets for a Liverpool show that was not televised for £100 each. Yeah. If you go to a Monday Night Raw, you're looking at £300 for a bad seat. You can go on a holiday to Italy for that, my friends. You can literally go to Milan for that for like 3 or 4 days. You tell me which is more worth it, you know? Anyway. If you decide to get into 40k and decide that it's not for you after a while, then good luck trying to find games and clubs that play anything other than Games Workshop games, or more specifically, 40k. Essentially, you're a prisoner to their success. As soon as you get in, if you realise, this isn't for me, well, whatever club you're in, my friend, that's going to be 90% 40k. So you have now cut down your potential opponents from 100% of the people in that group to 10% of the people in that group, which isn't great. Isn't great, is it? Not the great odds of getting a game in. Next, whilst the models are great, there are still issues. Some models are substandard, Cotiaz looking at you, or simply have not been updated in decades, and we all know which ones they are, one of which is Grey Knights, still salty. Some are shuffled off into Legends mere weeks after you've brought them into your collection. So, for those of you who don't know what Legends is, because I'm aware I'm talking to new people, Legends is essentially somewhere where you put non-canon things. So things that aren't technically legal in 40k, the modern 40k, they go into Legends. So you can still play them in 40k, they still technically have rules, but you've got to play them with your opponent's grace. You know, they say, okay, yeah, you can play that. You can't play them in actual tournaments, you can't play them in Games Workshop stores, or official events. But you can play them in like normal games, you know, between your friends, if they allow you to do so. Thing is, once something goes into Legends, normally the next edition, they don't even have rules. So they will try and get away with it by saying, hey, Caldor Drago just got into Legends, but you can still play him with your friends, but Caldor Drago will not be in 11th edition, in the Codex in 11th edition, right? I can always tell you that now. So basically, they just deleted him. He's gone, right? So imagine buying Caldor Drago, getting that model and going, wow, I know this is a really old-looking model, but I love it. It's going to be a part of my... Oh, no, I'm not allowed, because Games Workshop have said I'm not allowed to have Caldor Drago in my army anymore, right? You are beholden to Games Workshop one day simply telling you that your choices in your army, faction, or even units are not only not favoured anymore, they are straight up illegal and invalid in official games. Yeah. Do you know there's controversies in gaming where like a company will say, yeah, you can't use this gun anymore in a game, and they're like, well, why not? Why have you nerfed that? No, Games Workshop don't just nerf it, they tell you can't use it anymore. That thing you bought, yeah, a couple of weeks ago, yeah, it's in Legends now, you can't play with it. Most people won't like to play it in your games. You know, I know a lot of people in game stores who will say, listen, like, if you got something in Legends and I don't know who you are, I don't want you playing it in the game with me because I don't know what it does. And part of me is like, yeah, I can kind of see what they're saying there. It's not up to them to know all of the Legends rules as well, you know. But just be aware that this exists. Games Workshop does this a lot. They either leave entire model lines hanging without an update for decades. They bring out new models which are substandard compared to the ones that they replaced. Or they just nerf them or get rid of them entirely. Throw them into Legends so you can't play with them anymore. This does happen. Okay? It does happen. And it's something that you need to be aware of, this kind of behaviour that Games Workshop gets into sometimes. Here we go. The constant changing of the rules and meta is exhausting for most. But the most ardent fans of the tournament experience, right? Anybody but the most ardent tournament people finds the constant rules and meta updates exhausting. Absolutely exhausting. I do prefer the older edition way of doing things where, hey, this is your codex this edition. If it sucks, we're really sorry, but that's how it is. You know what I mean? Like, we never really got any Votan level codexes. In fact, some of the only ones we got were like the Demon Hunters Codex, the Ultramarines Codex. They're still legendary now. You know? We get a codex like that every fucking edition now. At least 2 or 3. There'll be 2 or 3 codexes, like the Eldar one, that are just absolutely broken. But in 3rd edition, that would lead to that army being the most hated thing ever. Like, can you... So, that Eldar codex that just came out, that basically broke the entire edition of 10th edition, right? If that came out in 4th edition, Eldar would still be the most hated army in 40k now. Right? Because people like to say, well, it's better now because we can balance things. No. No, having set in stone rules back then meant you could hold your rules writers to task. The reason why Matt Ward was so hated isn't because, you know, he's just a bad guy or anything. It's because he didn't respect that. He was a 2025 writer writing in the late 90s. He was writing with the idea in his head of, I'll patch this later. Which he couldn't, because it was late 90s. Once it was out, right? So his codexes were absolutely very controversial and broke the game and were really hated for that reason. Nowadays, that's a Tuesday. Right? A codex coming out and it being busted on release is a Tuesday. It's just normal. It's just absolutely normal these days. No one cares. So yeah, okay. Leagues of Atan came out, lol. You know, they were so broken. Eldar came out, lol. They were so broken. And then Games Workshop, you know, 5 or 6 months down the line, maybe even a year or 2 down the line, will fix it. Eventually, they'll fix it. Their reaction to the Eldar Codex, by the way, was nerfing the people who could stand up to them. Initially. You know, this is how much they don't listen to you. Their response to Eldar coming out broken was to nerf the people who could stand up to Eldar in the current edition. Yeah, you know, the mind boggles. But yeah, catching up, being caught up with all of this is exhausting to most people. Most people find it absolutely exhausting. If you have a job and want to play competitive 40k, matched play, or 40k based on the always up-to-date meta, then I really hope you don't have a family or a job, because one of those things is getting neglected. Being a Warhammer 40k player that keeps up with the current meta of the game and its codexes is, and on it of itself, a full-time job. It's so much so a full-time job that entire YouTube channels, businesses, have grown up around the fact of understanding them. Guys like Auspex Tactics, all these other really cool channels that tell you the rules meta and what's going on with it right now, they built their entire audience on understanding this game. Name me another tabletop war game that's like that. You know, I don't want to take away their audience. You know, they're really cool channels. But should people like Auspex Tactics really have to do, like, balance videos every couple of weeks? I don't think they should. I think that they should be able to be like, hey, look at this. This should be a really deep game where a guy like Auspex Tactics has 5 minutes to really delve into a codex and say, hey, there's this really cool thing you can do with the Necrons. Right? Hey, there's this really cool thing that I found you can do with the Blood Angels. We very rarely get content like that from those kinds of creators because they're just trying to keep up with the fucking meta as it is. And it sucks. You know? Next, things get reset with every single edition. The armies and units you love for this edition, well, enjoy them now because they will be going away with the next edition for the most part as the cycle of getting your wallet out for the latest shiniest 40k thing begins again. You know, every single new edition, you pretty much have to start over again. You have to look at your army again, you have to look at, you know, the models that you've gotten, and by and large, the most powerful models in the new edition will be the ones that didn't sell last edition. Yeah, so those models you don't want. Aggressors, anybody? Anybody remember the aggressor spam? Right? The models nobody wanted. The Space Marine within a Space Marine within a Space Marine. Yeah? Suddenly became the most broken thing ever. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm just not into them. I'm not into the a Marine within a Marine. Centurions, not aggressors. Hush my mouth. Centurions, right? Okay, so Centurions, the silliest looking thing on the face of the earth, and I stand by that. Silly, very silly. You very hardly see them on the tabletop because bringing a Centurion squad in your Space Marine army is like wearing Crocs, right? It has the same. It has the same ick value for me. It's like, oh god, right? But there was a time when those were the most powerful units in the Space Marine Codex, right? There was a time when those came out, and they were just standard, and then nobody wanted them, and then all of a sudden, here they are. They're now a part of your list. They're now auto-includes, right? It was only a very short period of time when it happened, you know? So those things that you didn't want to buy in the new edition will be very powerful in the next edition. That's just how it is, because they want to get them off the shelves. And lastly, the community of 40k can be relatively toxic on both sides. On both sides. If you accidentally go down a political rabbit hole. This is much easier to do in the online age with how accessible things are these days. It's much easier to fall down a political rabbit hole and end up thinking, wow, this hobby fucking sucks. Like, everybody here is a little wastrel sitting in their basement, gooning over Marxism or over far-right ideals, whatever it is that they're doing, right? It can resemble a cesspit if you go online too much. It is inevitable with something so geared towards men and manliness, heavy metal and grim darkness, that it would be a battleground for the brain rot that is modern thinking and political discourse, quote-unquote. But you can kind of avoid this by just going to your local store and just talking to normal people. But online, you know, a lot of the shit you'll see online, unfortunately, unless you stick to painting the models, playing with the models, unless you stick to that and some lore channels, you're going to come across this political stuff sooner rather than later. It's going to happen. And I find it exhausting. I'm sure all you do as well. Anybody telling you to, like, fight the good fight on either side, tell them to fuck off. You want to be left in peace, right? Just get off my lawn, please. I would like to be left in peace, all right? I will always have 40k. They can't take that away from me. I will always have 40k. I can always play 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th edition, Exile edition, whatever I want. They can never, ever take it away from me. Okay? Because it already happened. If they want 11th edition to be My Little Pony, 40k edition, fine. I don't care. Because I've always got my 40k. And I'll always celebrate it for what it is. You know? I am not beholden to a company, a corporation, for my happiness. Thank you very much. And if you are, you need to rethink your life choices, in my opinion. Alright? Just where you are. That's just where you are, for me. Don't get involved in the discourse. Mate, I've been so much happier and more... You realise what's important in life. I've said it before this week. I've been so much happier since I've disengaged from all that fucking bullshit. Now I just want good games and good shit, and I'll support the good shit that I see. And the minute 40k becomes something that doesn't resemble what I like anymore, I'll just do my own thing. I'll still play with my 40k models, right? I might even still get some 40k models if they're really good. But I just won't engage with the game, won't engage with the community, won't engage with Games Workshop. I'll just cut them out. I'll go to a 3D printing service and get my models that way. I'll go and play, Hail Caesar or any of the other amazing tabletop war games that are out there. Doesn't bother me, So that's where I am. And but just be aware that if you wander off the beaten path in 40k, you can come across some shithousery on both sides, and it sucks. It sucks in general. It sucks. So, my response to the question of is 40k worth getting into, unlike other people who've sort of said meh, maybe, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes, mainly because all of the negatives I've told you about are avoidable. They're avoidable in different ways, all right? Either through staying to your own community, getting your own friends involved, sticking to getting your models from other sources, maybe only treating yourself to one Games Workshop product a year or whatever, sticking to 3rd, 4th, 5th edition rules, maybe even doing OPR, things like that. 40k is definitely worth getting into. Because even the negative stuff, there are ways that you can sort of sidestep the negative and get around it to get to the positive. The positive stuff is much harder to avoid, is what I'm saying. Do you know what I mean? The positive stuff I mentioned is much harder to avoid than the negative stuff. So that's why I would say getting into 40k in 2025 is absolutely worth it, and you should do it. Go have some fun, all right? And maybe tell me about your journey in Hobby Nightmares. I'd love to read about it. Love to read about it, and share it with the community as well if you're getting involved in 40k. If this video has convinced you to get into 40k, let me know in the comment section down below. If it hasn't, then let me know why. Let me know why you're not going to be doing it. Let me know why you've left. I think we might do that video pretty soon. Why would you? What's made you leave 40k? Right, I love you a long time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll speak to you very, very soon. And tomorrow for some more Hobby Nightmares. All right, I'll see you soon. Have a good one. Bye now.